my wife and I have a habit of people watching. I would almost say a hobby. And so something we really enjoy doing is we'll go to the mall and we'll do people watching. And so we'll play games. Does anybody else people watch? I see a few people smiling. You know, I'm just going to be honest. People watching will make you feel pretty good about yourself. I don't know if that's your experience. It'll also make you feel really blessed and excited. Are you guys ready to roll? Is that what I'm seeing up here? No? Okay. And so we'll play games like we'll go to the mall during Christmas time and people are everywhere. Last 2 weeks ago we talked about slowing down, how it's okay to slow down, and how you should slow down and see God. That when you slow down, God has this way of kind of moving in and taking control. And what I'm hoping we'll accomplish today is that we'll slow down and see people. I'm hoping that Daylight will always be a church filled with people that see people. And so we'll go to the mall and we'll play a game, What Do They Want for Christmas? And we'll just sit on a bench somewhere and we'll watch people go by and we'll see a guy that looks like this and I'll say, okay, well, he's pretty hipster, I think. He's pretty cool. He probably wants some tech stuff. He wants the newest iPad. That's what that guy wants for Christmas. And then I'll pick somebody else out and I'll see this guy right up here and I'll say, I can feel him. I know him. I can see he wants cooking utensils because he's into this whole cooking thing. Because I'm good at this game. I can see it in him. And Carol say, you're nuts. He wants a boat. That guy's been wanting a boat for years. And so that's just a game we'll play. And it's a nice way to tune in with the people around you. A few years ago, we played a game, Who Would You Marry? And so we sat on a bench in front of like a store, and we said, all right, I said to her, the next 10 guys that walk in front of us, just based on appearances, based on first impression, you have to marry one of them and live the rest of your life with them. Which one do you choose, right? And, I'm going to be, the pickings were slim. It just, there just wasn't anything happening. And then this guy comes strolling along, and I'm thinking, that's a good-looking guy there. And that's going to be her pick, because he's a young guy, he's good-looking, he's dressed nice, and he walks in front of us like this, and this is the weirdest thing I've ever seen in my life. He notices us looking at him, and he pulls his shirt up so Kara can see his abs. I'm totally not kidding. So he just goes like this and shows it to her. And so, we'll do that kind of thing, and you get crazy results. And with the What Does He Want for Christmas game, I'm always tempted to go to I've never done it, but I'm always tempted to go to them and say, hey, what's up? What do you want for Christmas? Because we've had this game going. So I think that's probably the next step in our progression. I'm not going to ask that dude to marry my wife. That's not going to happen. But I'm interested in it. And then we'll do stuff that probably has more of a spiritual connotation to it. Are we ready to roll here? You want to? The movie clip's not working. Well, let me share the movie clip with you. It's from The Bourne Identity. I'm sorry Matt Damon couldn't make it today. Last minute cancellation. Apologies for that. And it's from The Bourne Identity, where those of you that know the story know he wakes up on a boat and he doesn't remember who he is, but it turns out that he's just like this super military superhero spy guy. And he's trying to figure that out. And he's at this little cafe with a girl that he's met. And he's got 6 passports that he pulled out of a safe. And there's a gun and some other stuff. And he says, who has this stuff? Because he doesn't know who he is. He says, why would I have this stuff? She says, I don't have any idea. And he talks about some of the things that are happening. She says, look, he says, when I come in a place like this, he says, the first thing I'm doing is checking out the sight lines. He says, I know where the exit is right now. She says, look. She says, I can see the exit sign over the door myself. And she said, I'm not freaked out about it. He says, okay. He says, I can tell you the 6 license plates that are on the 6 cars out front of this restaurant right now. I can tell you that our waitress is left-handed. I can tell you that the guy sitting over at the bar is 215 pounds and he knows how to handle himself. He says, I know that the best place to find a gun right now is in the cab of that gray truck outside. And I know that at this altitude I can run at flat-out full speed for a half a mile before my hands start to shake. How would I know that? Why would I know those things? That's the clip, so sorry I couldn't show it to you. It's a very nice clip. Thank you. I could tell that you were feeling him, and he's not even here. That's pretty cool. I saw another movie recently where two guys were talking about situational awareness. He goes, man, you're a nice guy. He said, but your situational awareness is lousy. He says, what do you mean? He says, well, what's the first thing you do when you get on a plane? He says, well, I go put my luggage away just like everybody else. He says, you know what I do when I get on a plane? Because he has a military background. He says, I find out where the exit rows are. He says, and I pace them off in my head. And I know which one I can get to the fastest and who I'm going to have to climb over to get there. And I've noticed the door, and I notice whether that handle goes up or down, and whether the door folds in or folds out. And I've noticed the size of the people in the exit row, knowing, am I going to have to push them out of the way? Am I going to have to take control of this situation? He says, so if there's an emergency, he said, who do you think is going to survive? Who has the better chance of survival? And then he goes on to tell a story about how it wasn't a plane crash and he survived. And the idea is that he's a guy that's really hard to kill. Hey, let me do this for a second. You guys talk amongst yourselves. Looks like something's popping up here. No, not working. Okay. So he says, man, your situational awareness is lousy. And clips like The Bourne Identity and clips like that movie, there's like a military awareness you could have, like a survival mechanism, survival mode. But my hope is that after today, you guys will have like relational awareness, that you'll have people awareness, that when you walk into a place like a restaurant, you know, you're not looking for the exit door, you're not thinking, where's the nearest gun, but you're thinking, who is that person sitting at the bar there? You're thinking, who is the person sitting next to me? Who is this person who, she has to come to my table 6 or 8 times during my meal and bring food to me? And that you're aware of her. I heard of an employer one time who, all he did when he hired people is he invited them for dinner, and they would go out to a restaurant, and he would gauge how they treated the server. That was whether he hired or let go people, was how did they treat the server at restaurants. And I suspect that when Jesus looks at his followers, that's kind of part of what he gauges. There was a sermon we did really early on. Go back and look it up on the podcast or on the website, called The Fisher King. And it's all about this idea that if there was one litmus test, if there was one gauge of are you a lover of God, are you a follower of Jesus, it would be that you notice people. That you're always aware of the people around you, that you see people. I heard somebody else recently talk about how to make an impression. And they said when you first meet someone, always get a gauge of the color of their eyes. So that requires a certain amount of concentration. It requires a certain focus to say the waitress isn't just coming and going and vanishing, but that I'm discovering her. I have to notice her to do that. And so if you get nothing out of this sermon, figure out what color people's eyes are. That's going to require that you see them. It's going to require that you get to know them a little bit. And one of the other things that my wife and I do a little bit, which might be a little more spiritual, is we were at a mall in Branson, Missouri. And when we got out of the car, we said, okay, each of us is going to talk to 5 people today about God. We're just going to approach strangers and talk to people. And the way we decided to do it was we were going to approach 5 strangers each, so 10 people total, and just say, hey, sorry if this is kind of freaks you out or if it's weirdo stuff, but we're just wondering, is there anything we could pray for you about? I do this a lot. I often will approach people and say, hey, I know this is weird, but is there anything I can pray for you about? And so we did that, and we had several decent conversations. And at the mall, we came up to this group of kids that looked not like that, something like this. And I think you would describe them as emo or gothic, but not quite gothic, more emo than gothic. And Kara walked up to him. Actually, Kara said we should talk to them. How does that translate? What do you think? She said, you should talk to them. That's what she meant. I said, that's a great idea, babe. Go ahead. So she walks up to him, and she said, hey, guys, how you doing? And they said, fine. She said, I know it might seem a little weird, but I'm just wondering if any of you guys could use prayer for anything. Could I pray for you about anything? And one girl goes, yes. That was her. She just kind of melted. She goes, yes. And she said, well, what can I pray for you about? She said, everything. And the girl went on to explain that she had just been having a really trying time at school, that she was having hard times, and she was just really, really thankful that somebody had stopped. And then one of the other girls goes, hey, you can pray for Jake here. Jake needs prayer bad. And so Kara said, oh, yeah, Jake, what's up with you? And he says, I got a big important decision to make. And what's that? And he said, I have to decide whether I'm going to enlist in the military or not. And the deadline is 3 days away, and I have to make that decision now, and it's a tough decision. And so, but the short of it is that we stood there for probably 45 minutes and talked to these 5 kids. And they poured out their lives and talked about who they were and where they were going, and they were thankful. And each one of them, we stopped and we prayed for them by name, and we talked about church attendance, and we talked about loving God and who Jesus was, and we just had this long, nice conversation. But do you see that if we're moving fast, if we're going shopping, and that's our goal, and we're not relationally aware, we don't see them sitting on the bench, we don't go into the mall purposefully, that conversation would never happen. And so my hope for you guys, like I said, is that after this, you'll start looking people in the eye, that you won't just be focused on what you have to buy when you go shopping, you won't just be focused on the task at hand, but realize that people are always the task at hand. Everywhere you go, everything you do, that's the task at hand, is people. There may be some stuff like paying the bills in between, but all that's just about people too. That's what it's all about. Jesus often was relationally aware. If you read about Jesus, just the story of Jesus, you see all these kind of situations where it says things like Jesus went into the synagogue again and noticed a man with a deformed hand. Now you understand, when he goes in the synagogue, when Jesus went anywhere, crowds followed him. Lots and lots of people followed Jesus everywhere. And it would be real easy for him to just strut through and say, okay, I'm going to preach my sermon now. I got all these people to talk to. But instead he goes in and he sees this guy who's not even allowed in the good parts of the synagogue because he has a deformity. It wasn't PC back then. If you were messed up, you weren't allowed in the temple. But Jesus stops everything. On the Sabbath, he gets in a bunch of trouble with the religious folk for doing this, but he stops. He says, hey, come here. And he heals that man's hand. There's other examples in Scripture, many of them. He sees a blind man. It says, as Jesus was passing by, he saw a man who had been blind since birth. As Jesus is just going throughout his day, he notices. He's relationally aware. He can say to somebody, I know right now who has a need, and it's that guy over there. Despite all these people pressing around me, despite all these people constantly tugging on me and pushing on me and trying to get my attention, that's the guy. And I'm hoping that you'll start thinking that way. You'll be in a restaurant, and it'll be terrifying at first. Trust me, it's still terrifying, and I do it all the time. You'll sit in a restaurant, and you'll see somebody sitting at a table, and you'll think, that's the guy. Oh, Lord, please, no, don't let me do anything in here. That's the guy. Got to talk to that guy. Got to introduce myself to that guy. That's what I'm hoping will happen in your life. See, Jesus is going through a crowd. Here's another awful picture of Jesus. I hate these pictures. Jesus never had a halo. He didn't have blonde hair, and he didn't stand like this all the time. I hate this stuff, but it's the only picture I could find that kind of did the job. And so Jesus he's with the crowd, and they're all pressing in on him, and he's got a sermon to preach, and he's got someplace to be. And this woman who has been on her period for years, and she's seen all the doctors, and she's tried to get fixed because it makes her filthy in that situation. She's considered unholy, unclean. She's not allowed into the temple. She's thinking, this guy can help me. She sees Jesus going by, and she says, I'm going to do something. So she's not even supposed to do this. She's supposed to announce, unclean, unclean, unclean. She's supposed to go everywhere saying, I'm filthy, don't touch me. But she doesn't. She sneaks in. And she gets up right next to Jesus, and she grabs his robe, his tunic, or whatever it is he was wearing. She says, if I just touch him, I will be healed. And with all these people jostling against Jesus, she touches him, and something happens. A miracle happens, and she's fixed and healed. And this is what it says about that. Jesus, it says, when the woman saw that she had not escaped notice, because Jesus says, who touched me? Right in the middle of the crowd, all these people pushing against him. He says, who touched me? Who touched me? And his disciples say, Jesus, come on, man, everybody's touching you. He says, someone touched me and power happened. And it says, when she saw that she had not escaped notice, she came trembling and fell down before him and declared in the presence of all the people the reason why she had touched him, how she had been immediately healed. He said to her, daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace. You see, even in that situation, it would have been very simple for Jesus just to keep walking. But he wanted to acknowledge the need. He wanted to acknowledge the person. He noticed, he saw her. If we're going to be followers of Jesus, we have to see people. And so I just want to give you a few tips. One is to stay centered. I really like this picture. You know, I've been to some Cowboy football games and Broncos football games, and the Broncos games are much better than the Cowboys games. And it's really amazing because you walk through those tunnels, and there's light at the end of the tunnel, and you're walking through, and it gets louder and louder and louder and louder, and as you step out, it's rah! I mean, everybody's screaming and yelling, 50,000 people banging, boom, 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 and cheering and chanting. And it would be very easy in a situation like that to see the event, to see the ball being thrown and being caught, to see the refs raising their hands at a touchdown, and for that to be the entire focus. And I don't know if you're like this at all, but when I go there, I can't escape seeing the crowd. I can't help but think about eternity and people and where people are at. And I think crazy stuff like, who would spend $2,000 to sit in that glass box over there with all their friends? It's an insane amount of money for that sort of thing. I get it why you would. I get it why businesses have it. But I'm saying those are the kind of things I process. I see the guy pouring beer all over the people in front of him because he's dancing and cheering so much, and I just think about his home life. Think about what his family must have been like. And I'm not saying in every single situation that I get up and preach or that I even address people, but I'm saying once you connect with Jesus, once you slow down and see God, it's inevitable that you will slow down and see people. You can't just see the event anymore. If there's anything He changes, that's what He changes. Is that your life is ruined. That's just it. You follow Jesus, He says, buddy, it's not going to be the same way it's always been. It's going to be something bigger, something grander, something greater. It's going to be the prime task, the important thing, which is people. And so what I want to encourage you is that when you're in a crowd, it's okay just to stop and watch. It's okay just to sit and think about people. It's okay, even coming here to church. We had as you can see, we had a lot of technical glitches this morning. We have a musician that's here that isn't always here. I've had a couple real stressful days. Well, Christmas shouldn't be stressful, but boy, it has been. And it'd be real simple to come in here and just think about the sermon and think about the service and think about the answer to the question about transubstantiation, which I still have a hard time saying. And it could be interested in seeing all those things. Or, as a pastor, I can come in and I can notice when you came in and sat down that Cheryl came to visit us today. Cheryl, thank you for coming. Sorry to embarrass you if I called you out, but I'm thankful Cheryl's here, and she's here with Ellen, who I adore. So Cheryl must be all right. But do you see that whether you're a pastor, whether you're the guy that runs the sound, I would encourage Booker. Has he noticed some of you guys today? Has he invested in your lives? Or was out greeting people? Did she just wave and smile, which is really nice? Or has she connected with people? And I'm praying we're a church that takes it to the next level, that it's connecting with people, that everything we do, everything we are is about investing in people, finding out who they are, serving them, and helping them. Becky Lyle, is Becky in here? Hi, Becky. Becky is Paul's wife, so she's doing something right. And I'm working overtime to try to get those guys here to Louisville. I am. I'm just going to be honest. So if you guys want to really ratchet that pressure down and get them here. But Paul was my best friend from the time I started college. I met him on the volleyball court the first night I started college. And, you can see why. Becky fell head over heels in love with him. Their marriage and courtship and everything is an outstanding story you should hear. But Becky is one of my favorite people in the world as well. She's really helped me in editing my books. If it weren't for her, my books would be awful. But we were sitting in this building one day, editing my latest book, going through line by line, page by page, period by period, comma by comma, and I had way too many commas, and she helped me correct that. When she looks up over my shoulder and starts going, and I'm like, what are you doing? She says, look. And I turn around and look, and there's a glass elevator right behind us, and it's filled with about 30 kids, probably age 8 and under, that are on some kind of field trip. And they're pressed up against the glass, all of them, and they're all piled in this elevator, and they're all going, we're not in school today, and they're freaking out. And Becky's waving and smiling, and they all vanish, and I wave and smile. And then the elevator fills with kids again. And about 4 or 5 times this happens. And these kids are and they're just excited to not be at school. And after it's over, we go back to editing and going through page by page, comma by comma, and she just says something offhand. She's not trying to brag on herself. She's not trying to make herself look good. But she says, when I see a crowd like that of kids, she says, I always try to pick out the kid who doesn't get very many waves and smiles. And I always try to make eye contact with that kid. And she's a school teacher, and so she kind of went on to talk about how when she's at school that there are those kids and that she makes an effort with those kids. And I'll be honest, that to me, that was one of the most Jesus-like things I ever heard in my life. Just her saying, I'm noticing the ones that nobody else is noticing. And I just wonder, how many people do I just bypass? How many people throughout every day, because they don't look like me, because they're not the same size I am, or the same color I am, or they don't talk like me? How many people do I just, as Jesus passed by, I just keep on passing by? I don't ever become like Jesus. I see somebody with a deformed hand and think, well, that's weird. And just keep on walking. Whereas Jesus, man, when he sees that thing, he goes, whoa, he homes in on it, and that's what he's after. I think that's the spirit that was expressed in what Becky was talking about. And so, something you can do is test the waters. Test the waters with people. You can make an effort with people. Some of you guys, I'm wanting to know all of you. I'm wanting to connect with all of you. It's impossible to do. So some of you have gotten emails from me saying, hey, you know what? Could we meet for lunch? Could we meet for dinner? That's what I'm talking about, is testing the waters. And I'll tell you, this has happened. I'm about 50-50. I don't know why this is. People show an interest in the church, and I invite them to lunch, and we have lunch. I never see them again. I'm not joking when I say it. So I'm scared of inviting you guys to lunch at this point. I don't know what I'm going to start sending my wife to lunch. Hey, I'd really like you to have lunch with my wife. She's pretty cool. But test the waters with people. I met this guy at Walmart last week. His name was Bill. He's, I think, 86 years old. And I was walking past him, and I was thinking about this sermon and thinking about connecting with people. And he was sitting at the pharmacy at Walmart, and I went and I had to get a beard trimmer, and got my beard trimmer and came out. And I thought, I just want to talk to this guy. I just want to get to know this guy. So I sat in the bench right there next to him. I said, hey, how you doing? I'm HL. And let me show you what happens. Is this going to feedback if I do this? Renee, will you come here? I said, hey, I'm HL. And this is what happened. Go figure. And guess what he said? Yes, his name's Bill, not Mill. Yeah, so I say, hey, I'm HL. What does he do?
Hi, I'm Bill.
Yes, thank you. Very good. Have a seat. So, sorry to put you on the spot like that. That's what you get for sitting up here. I said, hi, I'm HL. He says, hi, I'm Bill. And you know what? That's what always happens. This isn't rocket science. You stick out your hand, you say your name, and guess what they do? They stick out their hand and they say their name. And we had this long conversation, and I adored the guy. It felt like that scene from Home Alone where the kid goes to the church and sits next to the shovel slayer. You know what I'm talking about? And you watch that movie and you just think, that scene's amazing. And I walked away from this conversation going, yeah, wow. When this guy was 9 years old, his dad had golf clubs made out of wood. They were wood stick clubs, and he cut them off and made clubs for him. So from the time he was 9 till the time he was like 84, he played golf until he had 2 hip surgeries just recently. He's been married to his wife, Darlene, spelled Y-N-E at the end, which she's had to explain to people for 80 years now. Been married for 62 years, but they were high school sweethearts. They met in high school. He went off to the military for 2 years. He spent time in the military in Texas and Arkansas, which was nice because he was drafted during the Korean War, and he didn't actually have to go to Korea, but instead he got to stay in the States. And he teared up several times through the conversation just saying, I'm so blessed. I'm so blessed. He talked about his 2 kids and his 4 grandkids and his 9 great-grandkids and how they were all coming to this little tiny town in southern Illinois for Christmas dinner. He was a Lutheran. I was raised Lutheran. He wanted to know what synod. I was Missouri Synod Lutherans. Lutherans always want to know what synod you came from. I don't know why. When I said Missouri Synod, he gave me a high five. They get excited. I don't get it. Prayed for the guy before I left, just that he'd have a great Christmas. He'd be connected to his family in ways. And the guy's just, he's talking like this at the end of the conversation, just so thankful that somebody stopped and cared. Met his wife Darlene and another. I walked up to her. I said, you're Darlene, aren't you? She said, yeah. I said, I know. I saw you with Bill a while ago. Now, it wasn't God didn't show up in a pillar of fire, but you know what? I walked away just, yeah, this is what life is about. And it starts with, hey, my name's HL. You shouldn't say HL. That would be really stupid, but stuck my hand out and said, hi, my name is. I don't have a picture for this one, so if you go back to testing the waters, I was at a country club in Murray a few years ago, and my driver had broken. The driver is the big dog at the golf course. That's the one you hit the furthest, and the head had snapped off of it. So I'm shopping for a new driver, and I go to this country club, And nobody's there to greet me, so I'm looking at all the clubs, and I'm wondering if I can take them out to the range and hit them, but there's nobody there. And this woman suddenly appears out of nowhere, and she says, sorry if I'm not very helpful today, but my sister is dying. And then she disappears again. So that's how she greeted me. She said, sorry if I'm not very helpful today, but my sister is dying. And she goes in the back room. I think, well, I'm going to stick around for this. Let's see what happens here. And so I wait, and she comes out, and I said, so did you say your sister's dying? And she said, yeah, she has Alzheimer's, and it's really bad. And she starts crying. And I said, tell me more. What's going on? How bad is she? Does she remember when you come in? And we just start having this conversation. And I ended up praying for her and ran out to my truck and got her a copy of a book that I thought would help her and prayed for her again and went and hit golf balls and came back, and she's still in tears, and I prayed for her again. And so I keep a file in my phone of people. And I have files on some of you at this point, but I keep a file of people and who they are and what they're going through so that I'll remember. You can't remember everybody. You can't help everybody. You can help some. And so I put in there that her sister's name was Wanda, that she had Alzheimer's, and that it was a real struggle for her. And so every few weeks I would go back and visit this girl, and I'd say, hey, how's Wanda doing? She'd say, you have a great memory. I said, well, actually, I wrote it down, but I'm trying. But over and over, I was able to step into her life and just be a comfort. Again, no pillars of fire, no amazing displays of God showing up, but I feel like that is a pretty amazing display of God showing up. And so here's the advice that I have for you pulled out of that situation is you're going to see situations all the time where somebody approaches you and says, please step into my life. You're going to see it all the time. And people do it, they do it subtly. Say, how you doing? Whew, man, I've been at work. They called me into work yesterday, and they called me into work the day before, and I've been working so hard. And you see that that's a cry for help. It's a cry for somebody to care. It's a cry for someone to notice. Hey, how you doing? Oh, I'd be fine if the bills weren't coming up. Man, I don't know how that's going to get done. I'm not saying you have to write everybody a check, but I'm saying, because here's my problem. As a preacher, I don't know who wants me in their life and who doesn't. If I go up to the average guy on the street, I have this feeling he doesn't want me to intervene. He doesn't want me to interject, but that's just not the truth. And so when somebody hands you a golden ticket and says, please step into my life, you know what you probably ought to do? You ought to step into their life. You've been given a privilege. They've given you clear signals to say, hey, you're welcome here. And when you're welcome there, man, you ought to step in. But you also have to stay centered, which means you can't step into everything. You've got to find this balance. And here's my only advice on that, is you got to stay connected to God. So we go back to slowing down and seeing God, connecting with Him on a daily basis, connecting with Him on Sunday mornings in worship, connecting with Him as you walk through the day. And then you're able to discern where should I or shouldn't I spend my time. Because there's all kinds of people pulling, all kinds of people jostling, all kinds of people pushing and vying for your attention. And it's real easy just to hide. It's real easy just to go home and prop your feet up and pretend you don't hear people yelling out there. You can't do that either. So what you got to do is stay centered with Jesus. You got to be like Him, chase after Him, want Him, pursue Him, and then figure out what to do from there. Real quick, I want to talk about Zacchaeus. Last little story here. Most of you are familiar with this. I think Zacchaeus probably hates that song. You guys know the song? What was Zacchaeus in the song? A wee little man. That's so insulting. But it does say he was a small guy. And this small guy knew Jesus was coming. He knew Jesus was on the way. So he climbs up into a tree. And Jesus, with the crowd pushing and pulling and jostling, says, oh, whoa, hold up, everybody. Hey, hold. He says, you, right there. Hey, come here. He says, I'm going to go to your house today. I mean, that's pretty bold, right? He says, I'm coming over for a party. Get all your friends together. And it says Zacchaeus has Jesus over. And Zacchaeus was a tax collector, which in those days it basically means he was a criminal. He was robbing people constantly. They just take what they wanted. Because what they do is collect the taxes, and anything above that they got to keep for themselves. And he'd become very wealthy, taking above and beyond what was due. He was hated. Everybody hated this guy. But it says when he encountered Jesus, he came to Jesus afterwards. He says, look, I got to tell you something. He says, I'm going to give all the money back. He says, all this wealth that I've accumulated, just taking it from people. He says, if I owe anybody anything, I'm going to give them back 4 times what I've taken from them. So he starts going down his list of all these people that he's stolen from. And Jesus says, today, salvation has come to this house. He had an encounter with Jesus. And so what you've got is, you got two people in this story. You got one who's up in the tree, and he's looking, he's searching, he's aware that there's something there. He has a need. He's desperate. Then you've got Jesus, the master, who's walking around, and he's got the medicine. He's got the answer. And today, you're likely somewhere on that scale. You are somewhere on that scale. You're either the desperate and the needy, or the supplier and the giver and the healer. And the gospel idea is that you go from desperate and needy and wanting and dirty to walking around saying, hey, I can help. What can I do? Hey, you, come here. It's a transformation from to being like Zacchaeus to being like Jesus. Here's my greatest fear as a pastor. My greatest fear as a pastor is that 5 years from now, we still exist as a church, and you guys are still sitting in the same chairs you're sitting in, and you haven't moved along that spectrum at all. You've come in and you've said, I want, give me. And that every week it's the same. But my greatest joy as a pastor would be seeing 10 years from now you guys rising up and saying, I'm helping, I'm serving, I'm searching for people who have needs, and I'm investing in their lives, and I'm making a difference. Some of you will, some of you won't. That's the gospel. Some will, some won't. And I'm praying that you guys will be ones that do. Jesus ends that little story by saying, I came to seek and save what was lost. Every day you're around people that are lost. They don't know what to do. They're confused. They're hurting. Even this morning, I'm hearing painful stories. It's just a hard world. It just is. It just flat is. But here's the good news. It's going to stop. It's going to end. And it all will be made well. And right now you can invest in people. Right now you can help people and serve people and send them in that direction of the kingdom of God and His glory and His light. And part of that starts with just looking around. It starts with sitting in a mall and watching people go by and then going for it, investing, moving, coming to church and seeing the people sitting in the row in front of you, investing in their lives.